What up, my fellow operatives? My God, today must be Christmas because on the first day of the reveals, we got ourselves some Imperial agents, and it's all awesome. I won't say it's all awesome. I know a lot of people have their own little gripes and complaints about things. I know some people like to focus more on tournament-heavy kind of stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I love playing in tournaments, and I think some of the points are very key, but I also feel like as players, we get swayed into different teams and ideas. So I try to always be more objective, but come on, I'm going to just tell you, Imperial, yeah. But let's just dive into it because I don't want to waste your time with a bunch of filler, so we can discuss all of it. So now, as we've been looking at the factions so far, the first ones that we get them is the Death Korps. Of course, everyone loves a good vet guard. I mean, they're a pretty solid team when it comes down to it. They had some reworks. I mean, if you look into it, like the Guardsman's Order, what is it? If you look at it, it says Strategic Gambit and Support. A friendly Death Korps Watchmaster operative can issue a Guardsman Order. Whenever it does, select one Guardsman Order for all friendly Death Korps operatives, 6 inches of it to receive. Whenever a friendly operative receives a Guardsman Order, apply its rules until the end of the turning point. Operatives cannot benefit from more than one Guardsman Order at once. They only benefit from the most recent order they received during the turning point. To me, it's kind of the same, a little bit more. It's just a little bit clear on how they're like giving it out, you know, issuing the orders within that range. But I think that was it originally, that the 6 inch was there. So, you know, it's kind of like the doctrines now that act like for the Mechanicus, where you like during the turning point, you can issue out, it seems like, you know, when they're issuing those orders, which I think is pretty cool, but I could be wrong. The Guardsmen like could do it at certain points during it. Again, this is just something that they have for their own ability, but they also have different kind of orders that go through them. Like we have Take Aim. So if you read it, it says ranged weapons of operatives that received this order, excluding mortar barrage and remote detonator, have the balanced weapon rule. So if you guys don't remember, originally they had kind of more of a ceaseless, which allowed them to reroll their ones. But now it goes to only rerolling as a balanced, for only rerolling one of their failed successes. So I think that's a lot better. Having them reroll a bunch of them instead of one of them just felt over the top for them. But I mean, they are a bunch of shooty guys. I mean, how are you going to be about it? But I think that's just a nice improvement myself. Again, I don't think it's too horrible and like bringing it down. I think we'll see a lot better play. But again, who knows? You know, they could end up, you know, suffering more because they don't have ceaseless and maybe get the update somewhere else. Now, we also see some of the equipment, and we have some of their ploys that they gave us, which was the comm beads, which, you know, if you read over it, it basically says whenever a friendly Death Korps Watchmaster or friendly Death Korps Confident operative issues a Guardsman Order, you can use the rule. If you do, instead of each friendly Death Korps operative within 6 inches of it receiving that order, you can select one friendly Death Korps operative to receive that order. I think it's interesting, to be honest. The idea of that, this like you instead of like going out to everyone, which is kind of cool, you could have a special kind of order because again, we don't have all the orders, you know, like we only have one that's teased to us that could actually play into this idea that again is not fully fledged. Like getting these, I want to like always stress to people, is just taste of what is in there because you know we'll always kind of see that happen. But again, it's not really like the worst thing because again, it can play to a lot of scenarios to where you know like you can relay a message to one guy who needs, you know, one of the special orders that, you know, the other guys are, you know, are all close to the Watchmaster and he's not, and maybe he needs it in that scenario to kill somebody off from running. Who knows? But I also think it plays into the comms. We'll have to see more because I don't know how like, you know, you can relay or balance. Like we don't know the full thing of it, but I think that's, you know, actually pretty cool. Actually, I'd like to see that played out. The siege warfare, friendly Death Korps operatives ranged weapons have the saturate weapon. Now, for a lot of you guys, if you don't know what saturate means, saturate is the defender cannot retain cover saves. So basically, you just remove them getting any cover saves, which is kind of broken as a ploy. Dang. Your covers just go out the door. So you don't get to retain anything. It just shuts you down from retaining, and you still have to roll. You don't lose the dice. You just, you know, still have it, which, again, not the worst, but that sucks. Like, those weapons get pretty beefy at a point. Now, those are a couple things they tease to us, from ploys to the equipment to even their abilities. Now, if you look at the soldier of the Death Corps spotter himself, as we also have had the memes of the eyes that he can't do his job, He retains a lot of his stuff here, except that Mortar Barrage itself, like, actually ends up becoming, instead of a 2-4, it's a 3-5, which I like a lot, you know, and I think it's kind of, you know, good that it gets a bump because it's a Mortar Barrage. Like, why is it hitting weaker than certain weapons? Like, dude, come on. It's a bunch of things being fired that are explosive. Like, how does it not do more damage? So I think that's a good improvement to it. Let's see here. His abilities, Spot. Support. Select one enemy operative visible to this. Was it to this operative once during this turning point? When a friendly Death Corps operative within 3 inches of this operative shooting that enemy operative, you can use this effect if you do. Oh, interesting. That friendly operative's ranged weapons have the Seek Light Weapon rule. The enemy operatives cannot be obscured. Okay. Oh, the friendly operatives. Sorry, not enemy operatives. So the friendly operatives' ranged weapons have the Seek Light Weapon rule, and the enemy operative cannot be obscured. All right, so if you guys don't know what Seek is, it is a new term, or it's another term that they use to basically say when selecting a valid target, operatives cannot use terrain for cover. If the rule is Seek Light, it's more for light terrain. So again, it's kind of interesting to see that kind of like, you know, the Seek and the Seek Light. And if you guys are wondering how I know some of these definitions, it's because thanks to Reddit, some people have somehow acquired one of the pages to the definitions of all these. So again, I'm seeing something from, you know, Reddit, but again, it may not be the full-fledged of it, but this is to what I'm understanding these abilities are. So for Seek, it's anything of heavy terrain, and then if it's Seek Light, they're not getting any cover for any of the light terrain. And on top of that, the enemy operator cannot be obscured. That's pretty broken. I mean, so basically all light terrain goes out the door if this guy's giving it to him. God, that's Spotter. Come on, man. And I think that's actually kind of cool. You know, I think, you know, limiting it and then, you know, kind of giving it a clear definition so you know what everything is and not just saying this operative gets this and explain a giant size jazz rule. You just have the definitions implemented, and we see that again keep happening within that. And again, he still maintains most of his stuff, his saves, wounds. It's nothing horrible, but you know, I think this is a lot better. I think, you know, the Death Corps get a little rework. I don't think they got bad or shoddy, but I think it's definitely, you know, some interesting moves for him and some improvements. So I think that's a pretty good, you know, adjustment to it. So the next team we're going to take a look at is the Kasrkin. If you guys remember, the Kasrkin used what was called elite points. These were a big thing for the Kasrkin that allowed you to alter any of your dice rolls, which again helped them out a lot. And if you discarded one of them, you could do 2 of them instead of 1 of them. Now it seems the ability changed to Skill at Arms, where it says Strategic Gambit. Select a Skill at Arms for friendly Kasrkin operatives to have until the ready step of the next strategic phase. Now, instead of using the elite points as you were before when you were doing your rolls, you're now going to start issuing them at the beginning of the turning point, just like what we saw with the Death Corps and what we have already seen with Mechanicus. And I think that's kind of cool. We're seeing these kind of things where they're basically saying, like, look, you should be clearing them now and not the gotcha kind of thing, which created a lot of issues with people because the gotcha thing was people wouldn't be aware of ploys, things going on, and then they would just automatically change because there's a lot to be said in Kill Team. And you know, boiling it down to make it very straightforward for people to understand, I think it's great. I know some people may not agree because they liked altering them, but we haven't seen all of their strategic gambits that they have for, like, was it for Skill at Arms? And that's kind of like, you know, I think, again, these previews always bring that kind of sense of where we can always, you know, look at it and say, hey, this is cool. But right now, at a, you know, just taking it at face value, I think that it looks like a really cool idea. I think that you don't have to keep track of another record. And I want to see the other abilities for Skill at Arms because, like, it seems like there may be multiple ones, as we've seen that they've been describing. They've been showing the ability and then certain parts of those abilities, which means that they may be also breaking them down instead of just saying this is their one blatant ability. So I appreciate that point of it. So now we look at their equipment. They show us just a little bit of the foregrip. It's whenever a friendly Kasrkin operative is shooting an operative within 3 inches of it, ranged weapons on its data card, excluding weapons that include pistol in their name, e.g. Hotshot, Las Pistol, all profiles of Plasma Pistol, EACT, have the Accurate 1 weapon. Now, this trait is a new trait. Again, the Accurate 1 weapon rule comes again from Reddit, from the leaked pieces from what I understand. Again, I don't know if these are the officials, if somebody got a sampler from it from Reddit, but as it read in it is that Accurate 1 means you can retain 1 successful roll and that there's accurate X profiles that actually allow you to retain more than one, which I think is interesting because, I mean, at least now you can retain one successful hit and you don't have to worry about rolling all those dice. So like originally it stopped them from like, if I'm correct, the original foregrip wasn't this. It literally said that if they were taking a shot, that instead of worsening it, and it was only could be equipped to a las gun, so any of the troopers with las guns only could get this for the foregrip, but basically it just wouldn't worsen their stats when they were in Overwatch. This rework of it, I like it, to be honest. I think it adds a little bit more to them, and like you take away, it seems like, you know, these elite points, but you're going to give them a little bit benefits and perks, and I think that's a good improvement. I think maybe most people may not read that, but I think that's good off the bat. And then we see one of their ploys, which is basically engage from cover. When an operative is shooting a friendly Kasrkin operative that's in cover, you can reroll one of your defense dice. Which, again, I like that. Like, the fact that an operative can reroll one of his, like, defense dice. So you can auto-retain one save if you have cover, and then you can reroll one of the ones that fails. I love that improvement because it allows them better coverage again. We may not have the elite points, but we're seeing the bounces go into the team with that. And now we're looking at the Kasrkin Trooper, which overall it still maintains the same. It seems like they now just hit on 3s. So again, we're seeing those points come away, and we're seeing them getting a little better improved stats and abilities. But also everything else seems pretty much the same. But if you look at them, for the adaptive equipment, I think this is kind of cool. It says you can do each of the following once per turning point. One friendly Kasrkin Trooper operative can perform the smoke grenade action. One friendly Kasrkin Trooper operative can perform the stun grenade action. The rules of these actions are found in the universal equipment. Performing these actions using this rule doesn't count towards their action limits, meaning you can perform these actions for free if you bring a smoke or stun grenade. And that's a pretty good action. All right. One of my favorite teams, the Exaction Squad. If you guys haven't seen, later this week we're going to be posting up one of them. You guys can check it out. It's going to be Exaction Squad versus the Corsair. Man, I can't tell you what happens, but it was a good match all the way up until the end. You guys will have to watch it, and you can check it out a little bit. But anyway, I digress. So we're looking at the Exaction Squad, and they give us Repressed. Now, originally Repressed was already kind of built to it, you know, but they just wanted to make sure that you understood it seems like, by saying Repressed, because like it says some weapons in this team rules have the Repressed weapon rule. Below, Repressed. Whenever this operative is using this weapon, each of your blocks can be allocated to block 2 unresolved successes, and if the operative is retaliating, you resolve this at first attack dice. So so basically it was the original rules for, I mean, when I'm thinking of subductors is what they're literally saying it to. Maybe their Bretons got like Repress, and now they all have Repress, which would be cool if they're good with it. Cool. But I'm just assuming it's the same thing for the subductors, the Cascadator, and like for the leader, you know, they all have their, you know, batons or their mauls. Remember, they're mauls, not batons. But they have their mauls, so I'm imagining it's the same thing for them having their shields, you know, like there's no real big change to that. I don't see anything like big. Now, in their equipment for the strobing phosphorus lumen, we do see a change going it from 6 inches from what it originally used to say to 2 inches. So instead of having it saying like, I can see him from 6 inches, he's within 6 inches, you know, you can't get those rerolls or anybody close. You have to literally be up on him in the engagement area, or as they were changing it, that you have to be up to him 2 inches so that it can actually affect him, and he cannot reroll their attack dice results of 1. So instead of saying you can't reroll dice, you just can't reroll the attack dice of 1s. Again, limiting them, kind of nerfing them. I'm not super excited by it, but you know, it is what it is. Kind of feels like it's like, I mean, we're not seeing really big changes on that part. And then we go to their ploy, Long Arm of the Emperor's Law. They use the Firefight ploy when a friendly Exaction Squad operative is performing the shoot action, and you select a weapon with the range X weapon rule, excluding frag, crack, grenade. Until the end of the action, add 3 to X. So range X is another term that came. It basically says, like the shotguns that come with them, it's only 6 inches. So now, instead of only getting 6 inches on their shotguns or anything that is limited in range, which is, as long as it has a range X profile, it will say range 8, range 7 that we saw on the cards already. It's now going from 6 to 9. So, oh, yeah, they get an additional 3 inches. So they don't get to fire across the board, but they definitely get a little bit more reach. Again, their long range game isn't that great, so I don't see that as a vast improvement, but it is what it is. Now we're going to get into my boy over here, the Arbites Castigator, the man in leather, mid daddy, as we like to call him. But the thing with him is that we look at him so far on the stats, everything kind of seems to be the same, except his maul got from a 4 to a 5. But also, if you look at his abilities, this is where it kind of kills me now. So originally, Zealous Dedication was a 6-up feel no pain, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. But now they reworked it to whenever an attack dice inflicts damage of 3 or more on this operative, roll 1d6 on a d5 up, subtract 1 from the inflicted damage. And I'm thinking like, so you went from null inviting 3, 4, 5, 6 points of damage from each dice from a 6-up feel no pain, which again fits the leathery daddy scenario, but you now only subtract 1 from that inflicted damage. So like, yeah, you get a 5-up, but now you only subtract 1. So if he's taking like 8 points of damage, okay, cool. But most weapons usually hit a lot higher, so I feel that's just a downgrade. And again, I could be wrong, but I just, that just doesn't feel great. And then what's kind of weird too is the Castigator arrest goes from them, not inflicting like anything above 10 up, they can't arrest, but anything 10 and below they can arrest and subdue for the rest of the game if they choose to, so slightly, if they do not kill each other. But the weird part is now they remove that, and now it's whenever an enemy operative is within control range of this operative, if no other enemy operatives are within this operative's control range, that enemy operative cannot perform the fallback out. So he doesn't even get to subdue him. He just, he can't fall back. Now, that sucks because it was kind of, he had manacles built into him. Because again, I think he's holding manacles, if I'm correct. But if you equip him with manacles in the equipment, that should give you what you're looking for, but allowing them to kind of like fall back and run from you this time. They literally have to stay right up to you to where they're forcing a close combat scenario, which I think is cool because he could also be one of those honey potters who takes damage, gets in there, gets people in that they can't move away, and then you push your team in to fire in. Again, we don't know if that ability is still there, but again, I'm hoping it is, because if not, this just feels like a weird kind of like rework of him, and I feel like he didn't really get better. It kind of feels like the Exaction Squad kind of got I don't know. Seems not so hot. I'm not too, for my bad boys who I love to play, it feels like, but again, with objectives and the way they chase now, it may be different. Did somebody say Imperial Navy breaches? I did. And of course, you guys know these bad boys that have been running with Inquisitorial Agents more in runs, and not so much as solo. We now get to see them again in 3.0 and their reworks a little bit. But looking at it so far, the breach and clear, it just seems more cleaned up more than it seems changed. It still has the 2 GA activation, but instead of stating it, it just tells you if one activates, this one can activate during this turning point, and that's it. And I think that's nice that it just cleans it up a little bit. But I thought we'd see a little bit more, maybe add another one, or maybe they do something cool. But again, still the same ability. And now we're going to take a look at their equipment. And so far, again, combat stims looks like they got downgraded from giving everybody a 1 additional hit point. They now just, you can ignore any changes to the move stat of friendly Imperial Navy breacher operatives from being injured. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, as a player of breachers, that just feels really garbagey. I liked the combat stim originally, how it worked, where you would just get 1 additional, wound. This one now basically says, nah, you don't get the additional wound. You just get to ignore any changes to your move stat or friendly Imperial Navy breacher operatives from being injured. So they just can't be injured. Yay. Really, I don't know. Again, we'll see. These are only teasers, but that feels weird. All right, let's move to their ploy, Deckhand. Use this firefight ploy during a friendly Imperial Navy breacher operative's activation. If it has an APL stat of 1 or 2, that operative can perform a free operate hatch action during its activation and can do so during the charge or fallback action. Okay. You cannot use this ploy if the access point has been welded shut. Unless it's a friendly hatch cutter operative's activation. Okay, cool. So I guess you just get the free action to open hatches, and it's just into a dark scenario. I mean, it could also apply to just opening just doors in general, because we just learned with the new sit coming out that you basically have close confines, kind of bunkerish. So maybe that's what they're talking about. I just don't see many open and close scenarios where that's working as a lot. That's such a weird. Wow, these updates for Imperial Breach is a little bit wonky, it seems like. So now we're going to take a look at the Navis Endurant as the operative that they leaked to us for the Imperial Navy Breachers. My thing for this one is that he looks pretty much the same. They seem to just clean up Breach Wall, where they basically are just saying that, you know, there can only be one operative touching the space. You can't have multiple, so you can't just block the door with like 6 guys behind him. You can only do it with 1 behind him, which again, I think is fair. It's 1 shield. It's not a huge old thing here. He's got the same as, you know, fight first. He can still disengage and fall back action for 1 less, so he gets those for free. It doesn't seem like a lot of, but again, he seems pretty solid as a character. So I mean, again, what are the other changes that will make this different for me? Because again, I don't see much that makes them seem better. They seem to actually have gotten not so good, which kind of sucks. All right. So the next team we're going to be talking about is Novitiates. If you guys remember, the Acts of Faith for the Novitiates originally started with the turning point of them getting 3 points, performing a task at the end, giving them an additional point, and they had a Chalice Lady who was ringing around about, I think, 1 or 2, depending on the task they performed. So eventually you were maxing out to like 5 or 6 faith points, and in those faith points you use Acts of Faith that could come in and were told at certain specific points. Now, instead of doing that, they changed it to the Acts of Faith. In the ready step of each strategic phase, you gain a number of faith points equal to half the number of friendly novitiate operatives that have been incapacitated, rounding up. Whenever a friendly novitiate operative is shooting, fighting, or retaliating, or an operative is shooting it in the roll attack dice or roll defense dice step, if an operative is shooting it, you can spend your faith points to use 1 act of faith. You cannot use more than 1 act of faith per sequence, and their costs and effects are as follows. So as we see with the points, you're basically, instead of like saying you automatically get 3, they take half their team, round up, get 6 off the bat, and then from that, I imagine the Chalice Lady, it would seem, because it says round ups, and the team usually consists of 10, so rounding up, you get 6 off the bat, it seems like. And then if you have the Chalice Lady, it seems like that's actually an improvement to how much, you know, faith points they're actually getting. And again, we don't know if that's going to be like a big drastic change, because we don't know how much the Chalice Lady is going to be doing. But, you know, I'm hoping that it actually, you know, doesn't give them more, because they don't need enough. But again, it's only saying they can only use 1 of their Acts of Faith. But again, if you look over a team of 10, and then you get like 6 off the bat, and as long as you're not like burning through them, you can basically do like an act of faith for each one. Again, pretty cool, and I think it's a great idea, but also I think it's a little bit interesting, because now it seems like they have more faith points than they did before, which doesn't spell well for some. But again, that could also be bad, because again, I could have the points wrong. They could be actually making less than they did originally. So now we look at their equipment with the auto chastiser. Originally, when they did this, they could re-roll all their 1s that they had gotten originally, having this equipment. And if on the re-rolls they got any 1s, they would suffer. And if they didn't, they got their re-rolls. To me, that doesn't seem so much like a chastiser. So the way they kind of seem like they reworked it now is once per turning point, when a friendly novitiate operative is shooting, fighting, or retaliating in the roll attack dice step, you can inflict 1 to 3 damage on that friendly operative, but not enough to incapacitate it. If you do, you can use 1 act of faith for free during the sequence with a faith points cost no more than the damage you inflicted from this roll. So instead of just saying like you get a full reroll, instead it says, because I mean, if you think about it, you could hurt them if you were like, oh, reroll this one, reroll this one, and just take them down a notch and just whittle them. In this one, it says, all right, you can take 1 to 3 on a dice roll and then pick from the acts of faith to use it free for taking that damage. So I think it's a good allocation, because now it adds more of the consequence, because rolling at 1s, maybe bump it to 2 or 3. That way it was like, okay, they took pain for it and they just take 1 mortal wound for those rolls. But I think right now it's a lot better, because at least now you're guaranteeing, and you know you're not going to kill your guy, you know. And I think that's good as it goes for like the Auto Chastiser being reworked, giving them that they as long as they roll the 1. I don't see 1s enough, and anybody's board. So I think that's just a better rework. So that at least they are taking the damage if they decide to take that act. It's more of the, devil's advocate, do or don't. All right. And then we take a look at their ploy for the Ardent Vengeance. Whenever a friendly novitiate operative is shooting against, fighting against, or retaliating against any expended enemy operative, that friendly operative's weapons has the punishing weapon rule. Now, again, this goes back to the terms that were, set up off of Reddit. The punishing basically just tells them, and this is actually kind of a cool one, if you retain any critical success, you can retain one of your fails as a normal success instead of discarding it. I think, again, that's a really cool thing, right, for them to have as a ploy, because now you're giving them that one, like, automatically, like, these guys aren't moving as fast. So for them to, like, just shoot and to say, like, oh, look, he's weak, and get that advantage, I think that's a good way of actually putting it. So to be honest, I like that. I think that as an improvement is actually kind of good. I mean, I don't think novitiate players are really going to be happy with just that one kind of perk up. I think, that they may actually be like, it seems like we're suffering more. But again, I don't think the team got hurt that badly or even downplayed it. I think that it worked fine. Like, and I think it's doing, okay now with these reworks. But again, that could change, when the rules come out, because these are the teasers. Now, we're getting their character, the Novitiates Pronatus. This is their Chalice Lady. This is the one that basically gives them all of their abilities. No, I'm just kidding. This gives them their faith points and an additional for what she does. Now, Relic Seeker hasn't really changed up much more than just the terms. It says like pickup marker, place marker, or, and that's just, giving you like a clear distinction of these actions that you can do with clear terminology instead of just saying, oh, all these, and making it longer or trying to describe it. So it just feels like more of a cleanup and just the terminology for it. But there wasn't much to clean up at before anyway. Now, the Divine Acquisition, the once per turning point, when this operative performs a mission action that requires it to control objective or mission marker, you gain a number of faith points equal to the turning point number. So if she goes in there and she controls the point or does those mission actions, every turning point they perform that, they now get, instead of one, they get 1, 2, 3, and 4. And like, to be honest, I think the sisters are getting more faith points because the board seems like it may change. And that's kind of the thing about it, is like, maybe we haven't seen how much some of these acts of faith cost. So I think this will be just an interesting, look. I mean, again, from a glance, she's still got, what she was before for like, her abilities, movement, saves. But I think, the Divine Acquisition is actually a great improvement to helping out the Novitiates. But again, I don't know the cost of these acts of faith. So we have to see before, assuming that this is hurting or actually doing better for them. And the last team, Inquisitorial Agents. Woo! Yes, I've been waiting for this. So with Inquisitorial Agents, the biggest thing for them is that they, in the community, some people aren't very fans of it. That's fine. Let's get it. I understand the competitive, because some people like the idea of a cookie cutter team that just constantly plays the same and you don't have to remember much. And it is a high playing team, so it's not for everybody. But again, that's just to the people that enjoy what they enjoy. And I think, like this team, I think they're solid. And like, if you want a team that's flexible, this is my team that I enjoy a lot. Again, not for any other reasons more than just I like the complexity of it. And I think some people take a bad look at it more to see it as a team that bullies or does other things. It's like, dude. But I digress. All right. So remember that the requisition usually allowed you to take a portion if you took out another portion of the Inquisitorial Agents, meaning like I could take the Death Corps, Exaction Squad, Imperial Navy Breachers, Kasrkin, Sisters of Science, and Tempest Scions. But the way that it's currently reading, it still sounds the exact same. Like a lot of times you're just taking Imperial Navy Breachers, but so for the Inquisitorial Requisition, if you read through it, it kind of still seems like it has the same as before if you're an Inquisitorial Agent player. There's not really much that seems changed more than just the wording itself, just being a little bit more specific and cleaned up. So again, they didn't add any more teams, it seems like, but I am kind of intrigued because some of the updates it shows here for, the Inquisitorial Agents, like, I think that we'll see some updates to these teams. I'm kind of hoping the Sisters of Silence and Tempest Scions get better, that they get some kind of update for this team. Who knows? Could be wrong. But, it's one of those things where you end up taking the Imperial Navy Breachers more often. But the requisition doesn't seem like it's changed much itself either. So, I mean, I'm glad. They seem pretty solid on the standpoint for this. And then when we go to the equipment, it seems like the same with Servo Skull. That's, you know, once per turning point, one friendly Inquisitorial agent offered can perform a mission action for 1 less AP. I like that. It's always a good thing. Now, the biggest thing for them is their ploy. People hate this ploy. Some people see it as just toxic and dumb. You know, don't. Again, I don't think it's the worst. I think that against every team that you play, that the fact that Inquisitorial Agents can stop one thing, and only once. I mean, like, you can reuse it any other turning point, and I know a lot of people are like, well, that just sucks because, you know, I can't use it, and I can only usually want to use that during the first turning point. Like, cool. Luckily, these rules will possibly help with all those problems and not make it so much to where people are, you know, upset about it. But it's still the same rule. You know, I deny you one of your, you know, ploys during that turn. You get your CP back. I spend my CP, and you can't use it this turning point. After that, I can't ban it again. Pretty clear and cut. I mean, absolute authority. I know some people were hoping that it changed, but again, still looking the same, still on that point. And again, we look into the Exorcist agent, still carrying the same stats. He's, you know, got a shotgun, range 6, nice. But, you know, he's still doing his Exorcist. Like, there doesn't seem like much change to this more than, like, if you look at Chasten, like, it's just saying more unique actions. So it's being specific to what you can shut down now, because that was a big part of him before, was people were going like, well, if I use my Exorcist, can I do this or this? So, you know, in the end of the day, I think that, you know, that it's just, you know, cleaning up for most of the Imperial Agents. We haven't seen, like, super drastic changes. And I think a lot of people want to see that, but, you know, this is where we're at. This was the Imperial reveal for everything, guys. Like, I don't think that, you know, the Inquisitorial Agents got super, you know, over the top about it, but I think, you know, these improvements are just cleanups, to be quite frank. I don't even think they're, like, super drastic. Again, these are just the teasers for these teams. We don't know the full complete one. And with that said, guys, it's time to go through the recap of everything real quick and just kind of summarize everything we've kind of seen from this kind of reveal. These were just more of, like, the teasers of everything, but we kind of get an idea. Like, the Death Corps, it seemed they got some reworks to some of their rules. Nothing super drastic that we saw that it was like, oh, it's got to hurt them. I think it's more of a cleanup that we've seen, you know, for, like, take aim range weapons operatives that received this order, excluding mortar barrage and remote detonator, have the balanced weapon rule. Like, I think that just being clear on definitions is what we're seeing here, and that it actually helps people have a better idea of how and, like, what they're using for, you know, their orders. But at the same time, too, you know, I think having the understanding that, you know, what and how things are happening is a lot better than having a huge lengthy explanation that says, if this, like it was a math equation. Like, just cut it down. And I think the condensments are a lot easier, because, like, even when you read through the WAPedia for a lot of this stuff, you just see all this wording and you're just like, dude, that's a lot of wording for no reason. But their overall changes are cool. I'm looking forward to the equipment and seeing how that plays, you know, and their ploys still great, but I'm glad to see that they at least got their improvements. You know, these guys, you know, they deserve a little bit more, you know, better treat. But, you know, again, their team alone works really well, especially if you played into elites or if you played any kind of tournaments. They are a very high functioning team, and I like them a lot because they have a lot of playability. They remind me a lot of my Mechanicus, but without the doctrines. You know, they have their orders. You know, Kasrkin, we saw definitely an interesting, you know, idea from skill at arms, going from, you know, the points they originally had to basically delegating to just having certain types, kind of like the Mechanicus had. Again, I think that having that is a lot easier than having to, like, keep track of points all the time. I do think that the using, you know, equipment, improving them a little bit to kind of take a lean, like, you know, leaning so much into the points is a lot better, because then now you're not relying so much on, you know, just, hey, this is a game of chance. You actually have, you know, some solid numbers to work with, and you reduce those things, because I felt that was always the biggest gap with certain teams, is just having those, you know, issues. Now, this one really is the weird one to me. The Exaction Squad, I don't know how to feel about this, because, again, they don't feel like they've changed so much, but they've gotten, well, no, they've changed. They feel like they've gotten some changes, and it makes me worry if that they're going to see more changes like this happen in the future. You know, like, for them specifically, because they were okay, but the fact of, like, you know, having the Exaction Squad within 2 inches now instead of having the 6 inch for the, you know, lights, I feel that could hurt them, unless it's more of that we're facing more of a close combat scenario. Again, now we're taking away their range so much of like having that flexibility to just being always close and up in action, which again, I think it hurts them. And again, even with the Castigator, my favorite leather boy, he suffers, you know, I don't know. I feel conflicted because I wanted the 6 up, feel no pains and keep it that way, but they changed it to subtract 1. So you're now, instead of, you know, ignoring a lot of damage, you're ignoring least amount of damage, which, and I'm glad they improved the stats for it, but it's whatever. I don't know. I don't feel really comfortable with that. The Castigator Arrest, I like it because it does, if you give him manacles, it does kind of force people to kind of stick to him, kind of making him kind of the target point, which if you funnel people or do certain things, you can make some interesting plays. I'll say that. Imperial Navy Breaches, I think I'll agree. I read some stuff earlier when I was doing my research about a lot of this, and like, I feel like they did suffer a lot. It's mostly the combat stims, man. Like, that's the biggest thing for them, is like, that one additional wound made it very, you know, great, made them great as a team. But now that you're just now like, hey, look, I'm just gonna ignore me being injured or any negative stats, like, that 1 point makes a huge difference for them. Like, really. And again, their ploy, what is that? Like, the ITD, you just gave them an ITD ploy? You didn't, like, again, I feel like they doubled down on ITD with these two teams, and instead of like giving a more open range or giving them a functionality that allows them an open range. The Novitiates, I'm gonna think that in this one, I think the reworks feel kind of the same, just small, tiny incremental changes in like amounts that they get. But again, we don't know the table, so this could also be something that hurts them, kind of handicaps them in like not allowing so much acts of faith, or it could actually help them by, you know, readjusting it and giving them a little bit more so they're not as spongy at times when they need, you know, don't want to be. And I think the improvement to the auto chastizer, I think it's more fitting than it was before. The taking 1 damage is different. I'll definitely say the Pronatus, I think that's actually really cool that they can actually benefit to get a lot more out of her, and the fact that she now generates like more than 1. I want to shoot her even more now. I want her off that board. Now my agents, I feel weird because I haven't seen really much change for this. Like, that's the weird part about this, is like a lot of people may seem this as like, okay, well, they didn't really change, so it doesn't mean they got worse. Like, yeah, they didn't get worse, but they didn't get better. But again, maybe that's the cool part about this team, is that now with the new adjustments with how they play and the play styles, that, you know, they actually do a lot better, and we see a lot more of them coming out, and I'm looking forward to it, you know. But overall, I think the big thing here is like, even with like them, I think it's just a cleanup of words and clarification, so that way it's easier for it to be. I mean, like the fact that his Chastin basically allows him to now do unique actions. Dude, that clarifies a lot of things, and especially when they declare what unique and non-unique is, that makes it even a lot better to know this dude is worth more than he is. Not much has changed on him. He's got a shotgun. Cool. Good job, sir. And his fists. I mean, at least he's good with the shotgun. You know, like if he wasn't good with the shotgun. But he does have a range X, which is interesting because that could also play to some other stuff. Again, the equipment could change it. We'll have to see. But with that said, guys, who do you think out of all the teams so far shown did, you know, good, did bad? You know, which ones do you feel, you know, are suffering from the new changes? Which ones do you think improved? Or do you even think some of the changes were needed? Besides that, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name has been Hunter X, and I'm out of here, guys. And if you enjoyed it, please make sure you like and subscribe, and, you know, have a fun day. Keep rolling them dice.